And welcome back to the show today, guys and girls. Today we're recording the last part, the third episode of this three-part miniseries. And today we're taking a closer look at something many of us grew up with, the kind of love we learn from the movies. Romance films can be comforting, inspiring, even healing, but they can also shape expectations we don't always realize we're carrying. What happens when the stories we watch start to influence what we want, what we tolerate, or how we imagine real relationships should unfold? To unpack all of this today, I'm joined by someone who has a unique perspective on this. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Sarah Copeland, and I'm very excited to be here.
All right, that's great. Lovely to have you on, Sarah. Today we're going to be exploring how romance movies impact the way we love, the pressures they create, and the truths we sometimes overlook. Would you like to just start by, giving a little introduction on, what age you are and what generation you grew up and maybe marital status?
I'm 75 years old, and I'm married. Um, and I grew up in the 1950s and 60s, and I guess I'm called a baby boomer.
That's perfect. That is perfect. So today we're going to be really discussing, when you watch a romance movie, what type of effect does it have on you? What message do you take from a movie and you apply to your own real relationships in the same world? So just off the first, idea, what comes to your mind when you think of romance movies and the messages it sends to the real world?
Well, in most romance movies, there are some kind of obstacles that get in the way of two people loving each other. And so I usually admire the way the characters handle those things, um, and end up with true love for each other.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't always work out, but and has a sad ending, but I come away with a warm feeling that they were devoted to each other.
Yeah, and in a way, and sometimes when it doesn't work out, it reflects the real world in a way. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, right, exactly. Sometimes things just don't work out.
Yeah. Like it's almost like, these movies are reflecting our very existence as humans. We all, you know, fall in love sometimes and, but it doesn't work out. And I think the honesty from the movies really drives into how much it connects with the people who watch the movies. Wouldn't you
Right.
agree?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I asked Sarah to, just like I asked, my other guest to give me three movies that she felt from her generation really impacted her and, really gave her a strong message into how to, maybe navigate her relationships, as, someone who's falling in love at a young age. And she said these three movies impacted her the most. And the first one I want to, talk about is the movie Love Story. And, what kind of impact did that have on you as someone growing up in your generation? And how did you take the message and apply it to your own relationships, whether that be whether that be, finding love or just in your own family and friends?
Well, this is a movie that made me cry, and I don't normally cry during a movie.
Really?
It showed me what true love can endure, no matter what the differences or challenges are. The two main characters, Oliver and Jenny, come from very different backgrounds. He's wealthy, goes to Harvard, and she's from a blue collar background. And his parents didn't want them to marry. So um, they overcame those challenges, um, even though there were lots of differences.
Yeah.
But she ends up with a terminal illness.
Yeah.
And so I just came away with their strong love for each other and
Mhm.
even beyond death.
Yeah.
And I think this kind of love is rare and beautiful.
Yeah. Do you take that and apply that to your own life? You willing to really cherish the people who you love because you know how much of, death has impacted people and, the limited time we have with people?
Yeah, I mean it definitely shows that life is very fragile and you never know from moment to moment what's going to happen. You
Yeah.
can't predict it. So you need to really cherish those good times and the love that you have for your friends and relatives.
Yeah. Especially around the holidays, it's really important to cherish the ones you love. And I think that is a very strong message that you can take from a movie like this to cherish the ones you love, especially, the ones that are getting older or even the ones that, you might not see as much because, it's very important to, really take the time to put the effort into a relationship. And I think that's what we can really take away from a movie like this that has a strong message of really spending time with the people you love, whether that be friends or family or just, pets, anybody. So,
And one line in the movie is that,
what was this your favorite line you would say?
yes,
Your favorite line. Here
my
we go.
favorite line is Jenny tells Oliver that love means never having to say you're sorry. It's a
Oh
very
my
famous
gosh,
line from
that
the
is a
movie.
great line. I mean, that makes me a little emotional thinking about that. I mean,
Mm.
love means you never have to say you're sorry. Man, just take that in for a second. Feel how strong that is. I mean, man, it's giving me shivers just thinking about it.
Yeah.
But anyway, do you think that's really true in our, real lives? Love means you never have to say you're sorry.
I think it should be true, but it's not always true. Sometimes people need to say they're sorry.
That's true. That's true. I mean, maybe it's what we want to
Yeah,
happen.
it's what your goal is,
Your
but
goal is. I love that. I love that. All right. So, love story. Great message there. Cherish time. Love means you never have to say you're sorry. Very strong and important message. Now, I asked her for a couple more movies, and the second one I wanted to ask you about is, West Side Story, and also how that, really affects you and what, strong message you took from that movie.
well, it's about two people who fall in love.
Hmm.
They're from different gangs in New York City
Yeah.
during the 1950s, and all the odds are against them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of violence involved between the two gangs. And they manage to, it's a love story that defies hate and violence.
That's very
And it
strong.
relates to me because many times loved ones are in the middle of violence,
Yeah.
especially today in this world. So, and I also got from it that true love doesn't always prevail in an earthly sense, but the memories of our loved ones do last past death.
Mhm.
Um, and in the movie, Tony, um, her Tony and Maria are the main characters, and Tony ends up dying in her
Okay.
arms. So I
Yeah.
guess now that I'm older and I know that time seems to go faster each year, I cherish my time with my friends and loved ones, kind of like Love Story also.
Yeah. Very similar stories, but still have different ways of telling the story in a way, and I
Hmm.
think I see a little common theme of two people being different, but also finding a way to love each other. You know,
Right, right.
would
It
you
is a common theme.
yeah, would you say it's very important? Would you say differences shouldn't set aside people from loving each other?
I think so. I think, they don't have to be alike. I think it's more interesting in a
Hmm.
relationship to be different, and you learn from each other that way.
Yeah. Would you say you and your partner have differences, but you make it work anyway?
We're very different.
Hmm.
We're very different.
Yeah.
And he learns from going to different events or things that I'm interested in, and he keeps me informed in sports about sports and all of that. I might not know a whole lot about that otherwise.
Yeah, but you,
So,
you try. That's what's so
yeah.
important, right? Is it a good balance, you'd say, to, try different things with your partner, whether it be different, because maybe it helps you, really explore a different side of yourself that maybe you haven't really tried.
Right, exactly. Um, it also is a way of it kind of leads to the concept of compromising too, which I
Hmm.
think is maybe one of the very most important things in a relationship:
Yeah.
communication and compromising.
Go a little further on that. How important, like, would you say it's one of the most three important things in a relationship is compromising?
I think so. I think so.
Accepting the person that you're
Yeah.
loving and, being willing to, maybe sacrifice, certain times to compromise for their, wants and needs.
Yeah. Just to agree at times to disagree and without fighting, actually
Yeah.
fighting.
But using
And
your words in a way,
right,
in a calm demeanor.
right. And maybe giving up a little bit because you can't always have your way. I mean,
Yeah.
especially if you're living with another person or in a
Hmm.
relationship with another person.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. We take away from both these stories how much compromise and how much, we need to cherish. And I think those are two very strong, important messages that come out of these movies. And, they're very important in a relationship because they can affect you. And I think those are two keys if you're going to be in a relationship that, compromise and cherish your time with the ones you're spending it with. And so I want to go into this last movie I asked you about. And I just want you to speak a little bit on the effect it had on you and your relationships too, and that is Gone with the Wind.
Yes. One of my very favorite movies. It's
Really?
been around for a long, long time. So in Gone with the Wind, we've got two different characters, Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler,
Mhm.
and they actually are similar people.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a little different from the two I've talked about before.
Awesome.
And they both love the luxuries of life,
Mhm.
and it takes place, like I said, during the Civil War,
Perfect.
1860s,
Yeah.
and they loved having money.
Nice.
Um, but the times get really rough
Mhm.
for them because the war has destroyed homes and
Interesting.
lives. And so anyway, they kind of come together
Hmm.
and are are kind of the same because they both are very determined
Yeah.
and very stubborn about what they want
Right.
to do, and they don't always get along
Yeah.
because they are so alike.
Really?
So that, I mean, in a way is gets to be an obstacle
Yeah.
too. So it's kind of interesting because they start out being kind of the same,
Uh,
and then under rough circumstances they display kind of
Differences or what?
their yeah.
You'd say differences. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And even when you have someone that you're so in love with in a real relationship in the world, whether you're so much in love and you feel like you're so much alike, there will be differences because, we're all our own person and we all are unique in our own ways. And I think if you could, really say one message about that movie, what would you say it would be?
Well, I mean, sometimes we have feelings that we have to explore
Hmm.
in a relationship, and at the end of the movie, well, during the movie, Rhett loves Scarlett, but she doesn't love him. She loves somebody else. But at the end of the movie, he ends up leaving her,
Hmm.
and then she realizes that she loved him after all. And I think she just didn't realize that. She didn't
Yeah.
explore those deeper feelings.
Yeah.
And so I think in a relationship, sometimes you have to go deeper, and maybe that's where therapy and counseling comes
Yeah.
in rather than just walking away from it
That's
and
fair.
avoiding it.
That's a very, very strong message away because a lot of people, when it gets tough and when it gets hard in a relationship, they feel like maybe they don't deserve love or the right love, and so they want to walk away and they want to block out any chance of love, and you know they'll say it's not your fault. They'll say it's me, it's not you because you did nothing wrong, and it's just them not wanting to or not them not thinking they deserve love in a way. And
Yeah.
that's
And it's work. I mean, you don't, I mean, you may be infatuated at first with each other, but after a while, you reality hits and you do have to live together and accept all the responsibilities that
yeah,
go with a relationship.
I couldn't agree more. So I have another question. Just, with these movies, do you think that the effects are mainly positive or negative? Like with movies, do they send positive messages to the world, or do you think they send negative messages to the world and to people who are pursuing a relationship?
Um, well, I think these three that I chose send positive relation or positive messages because it just shows, especially the first two
Mhm.
movies, Love Story and West Side
Mhm.
Story, show how deeply these people loved each
Yeah,
other
definitely.
and had to overcome hardships to do it. But the last one showed me that you got to work at it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Uh, Movies in general, they have their own way of just kind of sometimes giving the idea that, you know, they can raise the standards of a relationship and they can make it feel like you need to do more. And I think that's a very positive thing to take into a relationship because we should always, if we really love this person and, maybe we don't have the budget of a big movie to create these unrealistic scenarios, but we can come up with a budget friendly option to meet um, higher standards in our own relationships. And I think that's a positive way of, taking the messages from movies and applying it to our own relationships. And I think if I had to say a negative thing, it would be maybe, you know, I would say it's, uh, maybe maybe thinking you don't deserve as much. Sometimes movies can kind of tell two sides of a story. For example, I watched the movie The Notebook, and there's Noah has his own story with the main character Allie, and they both fall in love. But what about James Marsden character? And it teaches you that there's a lot of guys out there that are James Marsden's character, and he kind of has to just let go of her. And you know, I think a lot of people relate to the fact that sometimes you have to let go of somebody if you don't if and you can't force them to love each other. And it's hard. It's a negative thing to take away from the movie is that thinking you don't deserve more, you might take away from that if you're that person in that circumstance where you felt like you were really in love. But you really do, and you shouldn't take away from anything that you like. You shouldn't take away that you don't deserve more if you're the third person and this love triangle. And you should really strive to go out there and keep trying. It's very important to keep trying. And when you're in love, I think you know it's there's a fine line between letting go and you know trying as much as you can. And so that's just a negative aspect I could take away from that. And in terms of these three movies, I'd love to hear, in terms of impact, and the messages that these movies sent, if you had to rank them 1 to 3 in terms of, oh, this one impacted me the most, this one was second, this one was third, what would it be?
I think it would be the way I presented them.
Really?
Yeah, because I put my first choice as Love Story
And
and
then,
then West Side Story. And Gone with the Wind involved a lot of, it was a long, long movie.
mhm,
Took a long time to make
mhm,
and choose the actors for it.
gotcha.
It was made in 1939.
Hmm.
And it involved a lot of history and a lot of other things. But
Yeah.
the first two movies
Hmm.
were really focused on the love between
Yeah.
the two main characters. And I think a good movie, the movies that impact me the most, um, tap into my emotions.
Yeah. Right. For
And
it to connect with you and really,
yeah, I think that that's really the magic of a
mhm,
movie,
couldn't agree more.
is to capture the
Yeah.
person's mind. And sometimes after I see a romantic movie, I have higher expectations in my own relationship.
Don't we all? Don't we all? Yeah. And yeah, I that's exactly to the point. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And back to the last question, or a couple last questions I have was, would you say just positive or negative, if you had to lean one way, romance movies affect you and give messages of positivity or negativity to you?
I think positivity. Most of them end up with
Happy endings,
happy
or
endings.
somewhat happy endings, yeah.
There a lot of times there's a silver lining,
Yeah.
so like in Love Story.
Yeah.
So, you just have to look for that silver lining sometimes.
Yeah. And then that's great. I love that. And then before we end this, would you have any last, words about, that you'd like to say to the audience regarding our prompt or anything?
Um, or our prompt.
Just the effects of, relationship, or the effects romance movies have on relationships. If you have any more words of, you'd want to give the audience on how, they can, you know, navigate their own relationships, or navigate good movies to watch to help with their relationships.
Well, um, yeah, I mean, I think that, the ones that are positive are the ones that are uplifting. And um, I mean, there may be some negativity. Usually there is, to,
Has to,
make the positive look
yeah. I
good.
mean, there has to be some bad before it gets good.
Yeah,
Every,
yeah,
story, every plot,
yeah. So, the ones that end up, I like a good happy ending, but it doesn't always end that way. But, I think most romantic movies do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And before we end this, I just want to say, Sarah, it was lovely to have you on this podcast in this mini series, and I loved my time to speak with you about, movies from your generations and how it affected you and your view on your own relationship. So I thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Well, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure, Luke.
Of course, no problem. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this last episode with saying thank you all for tuning into this three-part mini-series, and I hope you check out the other episodes. They're just as good as this one, and thank you for all your time, and I'll see you later.